Okay, I greet all of you. For those who are subscribed to my channel, you might be aware that on the evening of Christmas, after unwrapping presents and having our big family dinner and everything, Mahoney, Sheen, and I went over to the movie theater and watched The Last Jedi. Now, Mahoney and I did reviews of the last couple of Star Wars films ever since Disney took over the franchise, so I couldn't see letting this one slide by unreviewed, although I know I'm a little bit late to the game as far as that goes because the movie's been out since the 15th, it's currently the 27th. Probably anybody who is looking for reviews to decide whether or not they're going to go see the movie or what have you probably already done that. So I don't know if this is going to help anybody at all, but for those who are Star Wars fans that just want to see what someone else, myself, thinks about this movie, well then you're in luck. One of the good things about kind of reviewing it late is that I don't really have to worry too much about spoilers, right? Because a lot of people have seen the movie already. If you haven't seen the movie and you don't want to see or hear any spoilers, then don't watch this video. Because there'll be some. I'm not going to go like thoroughly through the whole movie and spoil everything or that kind of. But what I'm going to talk about what I like and what I didn't like, and some of the things that I liked or didn't like are going to involve me having to kind of talk about things that aren't out there necessarily for the public, except on the already existing spoiler videos. Why did we wait so long to watch this movie? I mean, our whole household is Star Wars fans. Okay? I grew up with Star Wars. Played with the toys, of course, when I was a kid, collected them and everything, watched all the movies. I think I saw the original Star Wars 13 times in the movie theater in 1977. I remember it all pretty well, as well as a 5-6-year-old kid can remember it when everything started. It's my Star Wars cup, by the way. I figured I might as well drink from my Star Wars cup while I'm doing the review, Return of the Jedi. Why did we wait so long? Well, really, aside from that we were broke from Christmas shopping and going to the movies cost a fortune these days, aside from that, we still would have found some way to pull the bucks together and go see it if we were super excited about it, but we weren't. And I think the reason that we weren't super excited about it was because we were all so disappointed with Rogue One. For me, Rogue One really threw a monkey wrench in the whole Star Wars universe. As far as I was concerned, it just wasn't a Star Wars film. All this we won't get into that. If you want, I'll put a link to my Rogue One review in the comments section because I got a lot of other things to say about The Last Jedi. So we don't need to spend time on Rogue One again. But that's why we didn't see it right away. Mahoney was thinking she might not even see it at all, right? But decided, kind of on the day and on the hour that she was going to do it. So we went to go check it out. And I think all of us were amused and enjoyed the movie. There were parts of the movie that were... there were aspects of the movie that I think probably anyone who's a Star Wars fan or just a close movie watcher even is going to have some issues with. But, one of the things about this movie that was very different from others in the franchise was the level of, or the amount, I should say, the level too. It was a different kind of humor that they used, and it kept you laughing. Pretty much all the way through. Not like it was just a big laugh track or anything like that, but there were frequent and funny jokes, which I didn't mind at all. So I guess let's just start with the things that that I did enjoy about the movie. All right, we'll talk about the overview at the end, I guess. Let's talk about the things that I did enjoy. I'm an animal lover, right? And so one of the things that I really liked about this film was the new animal characters that they brought in. They had these like crystal fox characters that were pretty neat, hey? Like, I don't know, in one sense, it's a crystal fox. Come on, man. You don't go crystals as hair and they're running around sounding like wind chimes and stuff. So I can actually see somebody like critique that and say, what the hell? But I liked it. I liked the crystal foxes. I thought they were very cool. I like the introduction of several new animals in this film. We had, what are they called? The porgs, the little puffin guys from Luke's Island that Chewie ended up becoming friends with. These guys, I guess, people out there on internet land were pretty concerned that the porgs being brought into the movie were just going to absolutely ruin it, turn it into something goofy. These like cute little fuzzy puffins, But it turned out all right, and they made for a lot of laughs. Actually, there was this scene in the movie where Chewie obviously had like grabbed a porg from somewhere, and killed it and cooked it. He had it like it looked like a little rotisserie porg, and he was gonna eat it. And you have these other porgs standing by looking at him, weeping and shocked. Their eyes are all big. They're scared, and and he kind of growls at them, and they run away. But there's this one that sticks around and stuff, and kind of wrenches at his heart. And so Chewie ends up not eating his dinner. I don't know if he ever ate it. It'd be a shame to kill a porg if he didn't eat it. But he ends up becoming friends with them, as Chewie often does with introduced animals in the Star Wars films. So some people might have hated the porgs. I didn't mind them. I found them to be funny. I enjoyed them, even though they are a little bit too cute for Star Wars universe. It still worked for me. Probably the coolest, well, the crystal fox was, as far as I'm concerned, the coolest new animal that they brought in. But second in line, in my estimation, were these, what do they call them? Thala siren, they call these things. The sea cow is what everybody's calling them. There's a scene where Rey is following Luke around, and he's kind of just going about his day, doing his thing on his island. He doesn't want to help her or anything like this. She's come there for help, and we'll talk about that. But at one point, he's just going about his day, and she's following him around, and he goes to this, these sea cows laying on the rocks, and he milks one of them into a bottle, and he drinks the milk right on the site, and then he goes and kind of like, there's the tide coming in between these rocks, and there's this big, long, tree trunk sticking up from, that's, down into the water, and Luke kind of rides on the tree trunk and uses it as a pole vault to get to this other cliff, and then from there he sights some fish, and he stabs the fish with it. It's got a spear on the end, it turns out, and that's how Luke gets his food and nourishment. He nurses off of sea cows and eats fish and stuff. That I thought was really cool. Like, this is all stuff I enjoyed in the movie. I really liked seeing the different animals. They had another kind of an animal, almost like I don't know what you'd call it, very camel-like, but with big ears. And these were on one of the planets that they visited, where they were kind of like Monte Carlo style, races going on. And these things were the racers, these animals. Big Casino Land is, about, I don't remember the name, and we're going to talk about the importance of place in Star Wars movies too, because this is one of my biggest beefs with Rogue One, was they just like didn't get how important place is in Star Wars movies, and they introduce a ton of places that are completely unmemorable. In this movie, it's not that way, and I'll get to that quickly here. But yeah, the animals. I'm an animal guy, and all throughout the movie, you have this kind of recurring theme about like, let's be more kind to the animals, like the big camel ear things in Gambling Land were being abused by some of the owners and stuff. And then there's a scene where, you know, some of the rebels, Finn and his new friend Rose, released some of them, you know, out into the surrounding forest and stuff. They're probably recaptured, but that's what they did. You know, because they were being abused. This kind of a thing. And then you got the Chewie scene with the porg, with the rotisserie porg. So yeah, it was a very animal friendly type of a movie, and I like that. You know, some people might be like, you know, what is this crap? Star Wars pushing this, you know, these kind of things. But Star Wars has always pushed different ethical points that are, you know, current sources of popular discourse and such like that. So it wasn't surprising to me. And since I agree with the ethics that they're promoting, other than the fact that if you already killed and cooked a porg, you know, eat it. Don't just leave it uneaten. Just go away from the porg so they can't see you. So yeah, I like the animals. I like Luke roughing it in those scenes, right? On the other hand, you realize that on Luke's island, he's got, you know, he doesn't necessarily have them, but there's like these little people who take care of the old Jedi temple on the island, and as a result, you know, I think Luke's kind of taken care of too a little bit, although he's getting his own food and such like that. So he's roughing it, but he also has servants. Let's see, what else did I liked that they didn't introduce too many new characters. They introduced some, and they're good characters. Probably the best of the newly introduced characters, in my opinion, is Rose. The character Rose. Now, her sister dies early in the movie, and then she's got this little medallion thing that's half of a medallion that her sister had, and that ends up coming into play in the movie and this kind of thing. But the really cool thing about Rose is that she kind of develops this more or less like a love affair with Finn. And when they first meet, it's kind of revealed how famous Finn has become in that Star Wars world, amongst the rebels, because she works kind of in the what would you call them, like the maintenance rooms and stuff like this in the ships. And Finn at one point is trying to escape to get off of one of the rebel ships, because he wants to go look for Rey, because he's worried about Rey. She hasn't been reporting, you know, back or anything like this, and he's concerned about her. He was in a coma when the movie started. He woke up, and now he's worried about where's Rey. He's going to go find her, help her out, because Rey is his close friend from the last movie, and so he's going to try to escape on one of their pods, and Rose more or less catches him, uses some kind of a stun gun on him, knocks him out, and is going to haul him to the brig for whatever. I guess you're not allowed to escape the rebel force. I guess it's not a volunteer army. If you're on the ship, you ain't going nowhere, right? And there was a lot of this kind of discourse mixed into the movie too. With their talk around the Force and what the Force is in this movie. You hear that the Force really is not aligned with the light or the dark or anything like this. It's the in-between stuff. Hey, it's the in-between stuff that's the Force. And so you get this sense that it doesn't care, light or dark, and that light and dark are more or less balanced. Hey, more or less equal. Same thing later on in the movie. They're talking to or they're looking into some of the rich people that are producing the military supplies, the ships and the guns and all this stuff for the, I forget what they call it now, more or less like the Empire, but they got a new name for it. It's not the Empire anymore. So they're looking into this guy who's selling weapons and stuff to the bad guys, to the dark side, and they find out he's selling ships to the good side, to the rebels too. So the same corporations are making the tools for both sides, and this kind of. So there's a lot of this in this movie that you start to realize that, you know, this thing about having teams and, you know, the red tie and the blue tie and the good and the bad and this kind of thing. Yeah, we're all in this together, hey? So Rose is going to turn Finn in for trying to escape, even though she was like hero worshipping him at first, you know, when she realized who he was, and she was so excited to meet the famous Finn who'd, you know, done everything that he did in The Force Awakens, and then she realizes he's trying to escape, and she's like, zap, stun you, drag you off. But, you know, as it turns out, he ends up kind of recruiting her into going with him, and they're trying to, what are they trying to do? They go to the casino land, and I said I wasn't going to go through the whole script of the movie, and I shouldn't. I'll just say that I liked the Rose character. I liked her and how she, you know, kind of more or less fell in love with Finn toward the end, and looks like we got ourselves a new Star Wars couple kind of a thing. Hey, so I think Rose will be sticking around. Who knows though? Because another thing about this movie is they tear apart a lot of Star Wars stuff and get rid of things that we had assumptions about and questions about and this kind of a thing. So who knows what's going to happen in the future. But I liked that they didn't have too many new characters to learn. A few, which was good, but not too many. I loved the new places, not the casino land so much, although I didn't have a problem with it. A lot of people, I think, had problems with the casino land and wished that it just wasn't a part of it. Casino land is like, people have compared it to the cantina scene in The New Hope, and New Hope, and except with rich people. Instead of you know, being amongst the, you know, the criminal element that is less fortunate, we get to be among the criminal element who are rich, and they're enjoying their Las Vegas, Monte Carlo, casino land, planet thing, place. You didn't get to see a lot of areas or get attached to that place. I didn't have the sense it's going to be revisited again. You know, they didn't build it like a Star Wars place, and this is you know, again, back to my big beef with Rogue One. One of my big beefs was that the director didn't seem to understand that in Star Wars, places are characters. They're characters, and you have to, you know, develop that place. You know, from the very first movie, we all knew the name Tatooine, right? We all knew Tatooine. We all knew Alderaan, and the Death Star. Those were like the three places. Even though we didn't get to see much of Alderaan blown up, we got to see a lot of Tatooine, and we got to see a lot of the Death Star, and we got to know those places, right? And then you go into Empire Strikes Back, and you got Dagobah. Dagobah's introduced, and you get to know that place, and it's an interesting place, and you learn the name of it too. A name is important for character, right? And these places are characters. So if you don't remember, just like with people, if you don't remember a name, you're not going to be paying as much attention to them, and this kind of a thing. I think in earlier films, when they're going to go to a new place, they put a little typing, type the place name so that you can see the place name you're going to, this kind of a thing. So in Empire, you got to see Dagobah, got to see Cloud City, in Return of the Jedi, you got Endor, the new places, they need to spend time developing them, right? And some of the prequels did a good job at that, right? Coruscant is really, got to know that place pretty good. But Rogue One did a terrible job at this, right? Rogue One introduced a ton of places, none of which were memorable, none of which are stuck in my mind as anything. This new movie, The Last Jedi, does pretty good with places. Not great. It's the name thing. If they could get the name to stick better, that would help. We do have two pretty memorable looking places, right? We got this place that looks like that comes in at the end of the film. This planet or place that at first we all think is like Hoth. It has that Hothiness to it, and the battle line is set with a trench, and they're inside of a they're inside the rock cliff with the big heavy door. It's all very Hoth-like, and even the bad guys, the Empire, whatever their new name is, they're coming in, and they've got those same there's all the same kind of machinery that they used, all the AT-ATs and all that kind of stuff that they used on Hoth. And so you're assuming that it's Hoth-like there. But then it's revealed that all that whiteness to the landscape is not snow and ice, it's salt. And just under that salt layer, just under the salt, the planet, the soil is actually red. And so this makes for a very beautiful battle scene, because as the rebels are going to fight the bad guys, they drop these kind of like anchors like things onto the earth, and as they're going along, where their machine moves, you get these red lines coming out. Everything in that whole fighting sequence, everything that touches that soil, whether it be a blast or what have you, or a person or a vehicle, leaves a trace of red on the white. And just visually, it's quite an awesome place. So I liked that place. I thought that was neat. It was very, it's another place that's kind of like Hoth. We may or may not see it come into play a lot again, but it was, it's an interesting place. Where they did spend a lot of time kind of building the place for us this time was Luke's Island. Again, where's the name? The name didn't stick. I'm bad with names, given, but I think names are very important, and they probably threw the name out there, a couple of times, probably in the Force Awakens when Rey was on her way to try to find Luke. He probably identified that name of that planet and that island, but I don't know. But they did spend a lot of time there in this movie, and you got to know that island very well. You got to know all the wildlife on that island. You know, you got your sea cows, and you got your, you know, big freaky fish, and you got your, you know, you got your little fuzzy little puffins and all that stuff, and the short people that take care of the old Jedi temple. So you get to kind of know it. You know, you get to see the landscape very well, because, you know, Rey and Luke travel that whole landscape. It's very barren. It's just some, you know, grass and rock, basically. But it's a memorable place, and it's a place where there's a Jedi temple. You're not going to forget this place, eh? If we had a name, it would really be good, like a memorable name, you know, something memorable. It would be very important. So I like the places. These are the things that I liked in the movie the most. Seems a little, what do you call it? Seems pretty surface, you know? Seems like trivial stuff. I like the animals. I like that Luke was shown roughing it. I like that there wasn't too many new characters to learn. And his character Rose seems to be a pretty good one to stick around in a new love affair. I like that. I like the couple of new places that they introduced that were cool, you know? And there was stuff that I didn't like about this movie, right? There was stuff that I didn't like about it. For instance, slow spaceships. All of my memory of all Star Wars films, the spaceships were relatively fast. I mean, you got those giant Imperial cruiser things, those big, you know, the big triangle coming through space, kind of drifts slow and everything. I understand this is big battle cruiser or whatever the heck they call them, you know, giant things. I can get it why you would have a giant battle cruiser or a giant transport or something like this go relatively slow, but there are smaller war machines like bombers like we see here. These ships are bombers, right? That whole like thing that hangs down underneath the ship is full of bombs. And there's a scene in the first battle of this movie, and this is where Rose's sister dies because she's one of these bombers, where these things are moving so slow to position themselves over top of one of these larger Imperial type vessels. And they're going so slow that they're all just getting shot out of space, you know, they're just getting gunned down and blown apart and destroyed. And it ends up being just Rose's sister, you know, who manages to get in place where she might drop the bombs, but she falls down, you know, in the you know, partway down the hole where the bombs are, the bomb chamber, and her remote control that apparently is just like a button. You push just the green button and the red button to open everything and drop the bombs. Her remote control is up on top, and she has to kind of like kick the framework, you know, of the little pit that she's in to make the remote control finally drop down so that she can release the bombs. And they drop down onto the Imperial ship and they blow up, but of course she's so close to the Imperial ship that she blows up too. How those bombs dropped down onto the ship in zero gravity outer space, that's what they do. They drop straight down as if the ship has to get right over top of what it's going to drop them on, and then it drops them and they drop straight down like they're being launched into a gravitational field. Yeah. So there was that slowness in the spaceship and illogic in the bomb dropping scene at the beginning of the film. And then a big portion of the film is a slow speed chase. You have basically at the beginning of the film, they're destroying the rebel base. The new Empire guys are destroying the rebel base, just obliterating it. And so everybody has gone up to try to get into this transport to take off, but they're surrounded. Now they got to run from the bad guys, and so they go into light speed, right? And normally, if when you get your safe space, you finally have done something to create a little moment, a window of opportunity. You go into light speed, you shoot through the stars, and where you end up, nobody's gonna know, right? But somehow, for the first time in Star Wars ever, and this is a big deal is made out of this in the film. People are like, how did this happen in the film? It's never explained how it happened, but it happens. The bad guys are able to track the good guys, the rebels, through light speed, and they end up going right where they go and are still chasing them. And then the rebels are like, oh shoot, what are we going to do now? They've figured out a way to track us in light speed, and so they're thinking, well, we might as well not try to go in light speed again, because we're just going to waste all our resources going through light, hitting that speed, and they're just going to catch right up to us again. We need a new plan. Oh no, we'll get to that. I was going to talk about something that I didn't talk about regarding the first battle, but we'll get to that. So they're going slow, or it might have been even the start of the second battle that it happened. A big thing happened in the film, maybe a half hour in or so. So now they're going. They got the big Imperial guys chasing them in their big ship, and the rebels got their big ship, and they're both going slow through space after each other. And the Empire's ships, the bad guys' ships, they send out TIE fighters and all that stuff. And at first they're kind of like shooting the force field on top of the rebel ship, and then the commander, who at that point was not Carrie Fisher, and we'll talk about why, or Leia. But at that point, the new commander orders them to just kind of like create a certain amount of distance from the pursuers, and I guess there's a certain like magic distance where if you go far enough ahead, then the TIE fighters can't keep up their communication or something with the home ship, and so they turn back. So you don't got TIE fighters trying to mess with you anymore. I don't know about that. But it happened, right? So they got a little bit further ahead, and then it's just a slow chase. But not knowing what they're going to do. What are they going to do? There was a plan. The new commander was going toward that planet with the salt planet, the Hoth-like salt planet, and her idea was that she was going to get close enough there that she could send everybody off in these escape pods down to the salt planet, where they had that base with the big door and everything in the cliff, and they had that old base. And so if she got close enough to the planet, she could send them out on the pods. The pods wouldn't be seen, or they wouldn't register for some reason in the surveillance equipment of the Imperial cruiser thing that's chasing them. Why they wouldn't be able to register that, I don't know. There's a lot of like the technology and physics stuff in this movie. I don't know. But that was her idea, was get close enough so everybody can jump in the pods and go down there, and then she would go down with her ship, die with her ship, trying to kind of divert the bad guys away from them. That was the idea. So there's this really, really, really slow speed space chase that's like half of the movie. They keep coming back. They keep coming back. Didn't like the slow speed thing because every other Star Wars movie I've ever seen, spaceships are fast. Even the big ones, I've never seen something like that, this slow chase. What else didn't I like in the movie? I didn't like the secret Jedi tree of knowledge on the island, on Luke's island. Because, you know, for one thing, Luke's island is really barren, you know. It's like grass and rock. And there might be a couple little bushy like trees and stuff here and there. But the Jedi tree, the special tree of knowledge tree, is a giant, fat, you know, stump of an old tree that probably was 200 feet high. And I just can't even imagine that tree growing there on that island. I mean, okay, you know, maybe it's a petrified tree from an ancient past. I don't know. I thought associating a tree with the Jedi's knowledge was goofy. Just to begin with, right? The whole tree of knowledge thing, it's just like, I know that Star Wars kind of mirrors, you know, the popular culture and everything, like I talked about before. I don't have a problem with that, you know, like all the stuff about cruelty to animals and stuff like that mirroring the popular culture. I don't have a problem with that, but the tree of knowledge thing, I don't know what it is. It just rubs me the wrong way. And then the Jedi's got these books in there, these handwritten books. Seems to me, with all the technologies and such, that that they would have some other device than books on which the Jedi knowledge was stored. I don't know, but that's how it is some special books, just a little shelf with a couple of books inside the tree, and that's being preserved there. And Luke at one point is kind of like throwing a fit. He's all mad and stuff. Things that went on with Rey. She ran off with Kylo Ren. He's all pissed off, and so he takes his torch and he's going to burn down the tree. But then he chickens out. But then Yoda was there watching him. Yoda's a Force ghost. And Yoda called down some lightning and burned the tree down. And then Yoda made a joke. And that was hilarious. Yoda was like laughing and giggling and rolling around on the rock there. And Luke was all upset about his tree. And Yoda says, did you read those books? You know, page turners they were not. So, yeah, there was a lot of jokes throughout. But I was happy to see the goofy tree of knowledge get burned up. But I didn't think it was needed in the movie at all. There could have been some other premise that brought Luke together with the Yoda Force ghost, because Yoda has to tell Luke that, you know, some stuff about the Force and everything, and to chill out and not be so bent over what's going on with Rey, that this is what students do, you know, and he's not such a bad teacher and blah, blah, blah. So, yeah. For a little bit there was an annoying tree of knowledge thing, but it went away, and I was okay with that. Those were the big things that I had a problem with the movie, was the technological, the weird things that didn't quite fit into Star Wars land. Slow spaceships, you know. Somehow there's suddenly gravity in space to pull bombs down, and then you've got, you know, Luke with his tree of knowledge and some old books, and he even said something about, at one point he called a lightsaber a laser sword. I don't know about, did anybody in the Star Wars universe use swords? I think they had those lightsabers quite a long time by then. You know, I don't know. Anyhow, We learn some new things about the Jedi in this movie. And I don't really have a problem with the new Jedi skills. There's several new Jedi skills revealed in this movie. One of them is, well, I'll just go through them. This is what I talk about spoilers, you know. There's a way for Jedi to astral project themselves in this movie. Luke does this at the end of the film. In the last battle scene, there's on the Hoth-like salt land. Toward the end of the battle, Luke turns up, and you know he had made a joke way earlier in the film about what am I going to do? You know, show up with that's where the laser sword thing comes in. What am I going to do? Go stand out there and take on the whole Empire with my laser sword or whatever? When Ren is trying to bring him back into the mix and get him off the island and get him Jediing again, and he doesn't want to do it. He's done playing Jedi. In fact, he had kind of disassociated himself from the Force, but Yoda's intervention changed him, and he decided to use the Force one more time to astral project himself across the galaxy, to take a physical form at this Hoth-like salt place. He had a conversation with Leia and everything there, and some touching and stuff. I think they had a kiss maybe, and then he goes out with his lightsaber to battle the whole Empire. That scene is actually really cool. I don't mind that at all. Some people might find it goofy. There's a really awesome, like he walks out there, and Kylo Ren is all pissed off now when he sees Luke. He's like, oh, every gun on that guy, shoot him, you know, just blast him. So there's cannons going off. The whole, like, everything around Luke is just erupting. You don't see him. There's a whole it's all a big red cloud. And then when they're done all blasting him, they must have fired like 100 rounds of blaster fire or whatever on his cannon fire at his position. And then when they're done and the cloud clears, of course, Luke's just standing there and he does one of these. and then Kylo Ren's like, all right, then I'm taking my trident lightsaber down there. I'll fight him myself, you know. Yeah, it was fun stuff. But yeah, the whole astral projection thing, Jedis can do that now. I didn't know that before. Jedis can be anybody. We learn this in this movie, which is contrary to previous knowledge we've been given. What we learned even in like the New Hope and stuff, in Empire and Return of the Jedi, was, and certainly in the Phantom Menace, when Qui-Gon like really points it out, it's the midichlorians that are in your blood. You know, it's basically like it's genetic material that determines whether or not, you know, the Force is strong with you in the Star Wars universe. It's the way it's always been. You're born with, you know, such and such a midichlorian count or whatever, and the little midichlorian bacteria, whatever they are, they're the ones that kind of put you in touch with that Force. And so that's transmitted genetically, which is why Anakin Skywalker is with, you know, Queen Amidala, and they have babies, Luke and Leia, and both of them have access to the Force, right? It's genetic. But this movie decides, now we're not going to do that anymore. I don't have that much problem with it, you know. I don't have problem with it. I don't have a problem with it, but I think it's interesting that you can throw away all of that prior, knowledge like that, you know, in a new movie. That's pretty ballsy for them to do. And this movie does several things like that, where they're like, whatever you learned before or thought or whatever, that's not happening anymore. So I don't know if the next director is going to change it back. Is this like politics or what? You know, where you got to flip from this perspective, the genetic, you know, conservative perspective is the genetic perspective, perhaps the liberal perspective is this idea that it's just nurture, right? Nature versus nurture. What is it? What makes a Jedi? And according to this director for this movie, what makes a Jedi is nurture. The Force belongs to everybody. Force does not belong to the Jedi. Yoda basically lays this out. Force does not belong to the Jedi. I think it's Yoda that lays it out. It might have been Luke. It was Luke, because there's a point where he says the Jedi were arrogant, thinking that the Force belongs to them. The Force belongs to everybody, and so you're getting this message that it's nurture, not nature, that makes the Jedi, that enables you to work with the Force. I like that. You know, the same way that I like the animal stuff. But if I didn't have the same politics that I have, I'd be like, what did they just do to Star Wars? They just wrecked it, you know? Wrecked it with this anybody can be a Jedi crap, right? But that's what we learned. Jedi can astral project themselves, and Jedi can be anybody. And we learned Jedi can fly. Yeah, Jedi can fly, and Princess Leia flies in this movie. And that's that thing that I'm talking about. There was a scene where Kylo Ren is like leading this assault on the Rebels' big ship. And he's got his special ship that he's flying, and he's got, you know, those TIE fighters flying beside him and stuff, and he's gonna push the button to blow up the bridge. You know, got a big window. It's the bridge where the admiral is sitting and stuff. And you got General Leia Organa running the show. So she's in the bridge. He knows it's her. And he's thinking, do I kill my mom? Killed my dad. Do I kill my mom? Maybe I should kill my mom. No, I'm not going to kill my mom. Not going to kill her today. And as soon as he decides he's not going to push the button, then the TIE fighters, they're like, now we're going to kill your mom. So they go down and they blow up the bridge. And it opens to space, the bridge. And Carrie Fisher gets sucked out. Like, you see her go just sucked out into space. And I knew she wasn't going to be dead yet. It was early in the film. Can't kill Carrie Fisher off yet. But I didn't know how she was going to get rescued. I kind of thought maybe Kylo Ren would sweep by with his spaceship and grab her up or something. No, this is where we get to see General Leia use the Force, and it seemed like what she did is it created some kind of protective blue coating on her skin or something, maybe so she could not die from the space cold or not being able to breathe. I don't know what the kind of sparkly blue coating was that suddenly appeared on her skin. But the thing was, she flew, and she was using her hand, doing the Force thing, you know, you see close up of her hand, and then she starts flying back to the ship. And I guess a lot of people didn't like the Jedi flight thing, because when you think about it, how many times in the Star Wars films did we see Jedi and Sith getting tossed down big vertical corridors, you know, and either dying from it or bouncing off the... I don't know how far Yoda fell in one of those movies, one of those prequels. Yoda fell so freaking far and bounced off all kind of stuff. Still was alive, but he certainly didn't fly. You know, even Return of the Jedi, you know, even Return of the Jedi, you got the Emperor. Darth Vader picks him up, tosses him, you know, down that deep, whatever that is in the Death Star that goes down a million years. Kills him. Big flame, you know, comes up. His body explodes or whatever. So, in all the other Star Wars films, Jedi were subject to gravity. In this film, a Jedi flies. Now, what I'd like to point out is that we're in a field with no gravity, right? We're in space. She gets sucked out into space, and then she uses the Force, and she flies to the spaceship. Does she fly to the spaceship, or does she pull the spaceship to her? That's the thing, hey? Like in a zero gravity field, like we know that Jedi can lift, you know, big things. Like Yoda can lift up an X-Wing fighter, and everybody can lift rocks and stuff. We know that they can move things with the Force. So if you're in a zero gravity field, why couldn't you, you know, move the spaceship closer to you, or lock onto the spaceship and you would be pulled to it, you know? Makes sense to me. I ain't got no problem with Jedi flight. Zero issue. To me, that makes a lot of sense. So, but yeah, Jedi can fly in space, not just under any old circumstance. Other things that we learn about the Jedi that we were told before, but not necessarily spelled out. There's a scene with Snoke, right, in his chambers. It's very Return of the Jedi-ish. Snoke's, you know, in this big red room, and he's got his Crimson Guards there with him, and Rey is caught because she went to go see, like, she had been kind of communicating with Kylo Ren in a sort of an astral projection kind of a way through most of her time at Luke's island. That's why Luke ended up kicking her off of the island, because he was worried about her going to the dark side anyway, because that's what Kylo had done before her. And then he finds her in this little hut, you know, astral projecting, sitting together with Kylo Ren and having a little astral touching hands and stuff. And so Luke's like, get out of here, you know, or whatever. She's like, you know, I know you're never gonna. Luke didn't actually kick her off, but he's basically pissed off at her, and she's like, well, you're never gonna help, so I'm gonna go to Kylo, to Ben Solo, turn him back into Ben Solo, because I know he's still got the good stuff in him, right? So she goes up there alone, goes onto this, you know, onto the big bad guy ship that he's on, which is Snoke's ship, and Kylo immediately has the stormtroopers cuff her, and he brings her to present her to Snoke. And while he's doing this in Snoke's chamber, Snoke starts being an asshole and starts like talking bad about Kylo. You know, he's talking to Rey, and he's trying to convince her to come to the darkness. That's very, very Return of the Jedi. It's trying to convince her to come to the dark side and all that stuff. And she's not doing it. She's not having it. But in his speech to her, he's telling her all the stuff about how crappy Kylo Ren is. And Kylo's getting pissed off. He's like, hey, man, I'm right here, you know? And so there's a scene where Rey tries to, like, Snoke has her lightsaber, you know, sitting beside him on the throne. She tries to get it back to herself. She has the cuffs taken off. Finally, she tries to get it, and it flies back to her, but then Snoke controls it away from her, comes back, hits her in the head, and then goes back to him. Even that hitting in the head thing was pretty funny. There's a lot of jokes in this movie all throughout. But then Snoke's got her lightsaber sitting next to him, but he, you know, she's not conforming. She's not doing what he wants her to do, and so he's like, Kylo, might as well kill this one. So Kylo goes into that whole murder mode, like he was when he killed his dad, Han Solo. I know what I have to do, you know. Boom. He's got his red flaming lightsaber ready. He's about to kill. He's about to kill Rey, and then you see him kind of like, you see in Kylo's eyes and in his, just the little motions of his hand and stuff, and the music, you know what's coming. He's controlling that other lightsaber, and he's gonna kill Snoke. And that's exactly what he does. He cuts the Snoke in half, puts the lightsaber right through him, pulls it through his body, and top of Snoke's body falls off and falls on the floor dead and everything. That's another thing. Like we were shown Snoke, you know, in the Force Awakens, and there was a billion fan theories about who this Snoke is, what's his deal, and you know, everybody thought they were going to make something big out of Snoke. Nope, we're just going to kill him. So Snoke's dead. Forget about all that stuff that you wanted to know about him. Don't need to know him anymore. He's gone, right? He's nothing. So yeah, somehow, even though Snoke knows everything that's going on, he's the one that was actually secretly like bringing them astral projecting together and making them think like they were doing it themselves and this kind of thing. He's killed very easily by a little parlor trick by Kylo Ren. Snoke dies. Now in the movie we also see Luke die. Spoiler. At the end of the movie, after Luke has spent all his energy astral projecting himself across galaxies to this place, to fight, you know, at that place and stuff. Then, you know, it comes back to Luke on the island, and he's sitting Caesar or whatever they call that. Not Caesar, what did they call that? Lotus. Sitting Lotus on a rock, and he's all, you know, he's worn out because he's astral projected himself and stuff, and then for whatever reason he decides it's time for him to die. To become one with the Force, I should say. It's different, right? Is it? I don't know. It's death, but it's like a becoming one with the Force death. It's not like what happens to Mace Windu, you know. When we watch what happened to Mace Windu got cut in half, fell down the thing, subject to gravity once again. You know, Qui-Gon got killed, cut down, and he just, you know, dead Qui-Gon, right? But we saw Ben Kenobi in The New Hope, and we saw, you know, Yoda in Return of the Jedi, and now we see Luke become one with the Force, and their bodies just disappear and their robes just drop. Okay, so you know what I realized was that there are two ways for like Jedi to die. Not all Jedi when they die, have the nice thing where they just disappear and their robe falls, which is what I always assumed that just happened to the good guys. That's just the Jedi's how they end if they've lived a good life. Because when Obi-Wan is fighting Darth Vader in A New Hope, he says, strike me down, I'll become more powerful or whatever, right? And then Vader goes to strike, and his body disappears. I thought Vader killed him. All these years, I thought Vader killed him, and then when you start seeing Jedi getting chopped in half and stuff in the prequels, I didn't even think about it. Like, why aren't they just turned into robes? But then in this movie, when it happens to Luke, and he had no reason to really die, he just like he wasn't old or anything, and wasn't sickly, or he just didn't want to be anymore. He outright told Rey, like, I came to this island to die. Leave me alone. Go on. I don't want to do this anymore. But then he did it some more, and now he's like, all right, now I'm really, really done, and I quit. He turned to robes. So it made me realize that there's different ways that Jedis die. Jedi can choose to become one with the Force and be done with it, or Jedi can get killed and just be a body, like a normal person. So we learned that, and what else? Well, I guess that might be just about it. That might be just about it. The different things that we learned about the Jedi, the things I liked, the things I didn't like. There's a whole ton of information in this movie, so much more than I've talked about, and I've already talked an hour. So I won't say more, but I definitely didn't tell you everything about the movie. In fact, I told you really very little. I just pointed out what I liked, what I didn't like, and a little bit of new knowledge about the Jedi. Because I wanted to, talk about my perspectives on the new Jedi skills. And for the most part, I'm totally cool with those new Jedi skills. For 100%, all of them across the board, I'm okay with. I don't like slow spaceships, though. So, anyway, that has been my Last Jedi review, and I don't know what they're going to do now for the ninth film. It'll be interesting. I hope that if they put a kind of a one-off film in between this one and the ninth film, that the one-off film isn't as non-Star Wars as Rogue One. I don't know where they're going to go from here. I'm getting less and less excited really about Star Wars with each one, because it's too much. We don't need a Star Wars every year, If we had Star Wars every 5th year, that'd be cool, or something like that. Don't need every Christmas to have a new Star Wars. It's too much. But there it is.